Barbara, I can see that your current field is law, so perhaps I can elaborate just a little bit on the legal environment because I think for people who don't have first-hand experience in China, the environment can be very exotic.
Yes, that would be great.
So, I mean, one of the best known things about Chinese culture is the Great Wall. What it means is that, of course, we wall ourselves around, but we also wall ourselves in. The idea was obviously not to wall China entirely out of the world, but just to have like controlled gates of interaction, and all around it there is a lot of isolation. So, for example, when David mentioned Hainan Island, and you might ask yourself why is Hainan Island so special? Is because basically Hainan Island is a big development zone or special economic zone of which China, just like other countries, specifically in the Middle East, created a lot. Where basically it's a demarcated territory where you suspend the normal legal system of the land. If you go ahead and do business in a number of Middle Eastern countries, then in the economic zones you don't have to worry about Sharia law, for example, which is not as scary as Americans often think, but it has certain restrictions on business. The same thing about the Leninist style legal system that China has normally. So the government created all of these special economic zones, tech zones, development zones, where basically we use international law to guide business practices. I was very surprised, for example, to hear that here in Lujiazui, a business area in Shanghai, Google has 2 floors in a very prestigious buildings, because most people in China think Google is banned from China. But of course, that office is one of these gates across the Great Wall. Now, businesses like physics, when you have 2 different levels and then you have a tiny opening between them, it creates a lot of dynamism. And this is what the business people that I work with can use. For example, if you look at research and development and you look at pharmaceutical companies, because this is one of the things that we mentioned, the law in China is completely different from a lot of big major markets. For example, apart from the fact that China has an enormous population, so for testing reasons, this is paradise. Also, there are a lot of tests that are already not allowed to conduct in the European Union or the United States, but is standard practice here in China. For example, animal testing for cosmetics. So if you put yourself into the shoes of a chemical company, a pharmaceutical company, a cosmetics company, then basically you can outsource a lot of testing to China. Or you don't even have to be in China. You just buy the data that was generated from China. David mentioned China could do a little bit better, and perhaps one day they will approve a lot of international medicine. Frankly, David, you work for the Chinese government, and if they asked me about this, I wouldn't do it, because what the Chinese government is trying to do is basically to create a protective shield between a nascent and still developing Chinese economy and international companies that are in a much stronger position in the market. But Chinese pharmaceuticals and chemical companies, they are growing up very fast. So when you look at, for example, the manufacturing of vitamin C, Chinese companies entered the equation as the learners, but now they are indispensables when it comes to the manufacturing the active ingredient, the ascorbic acid. They are far ahead of the West, and that's why this kind of decoupling that we are all talking about is very problematic. Now, one thing that we have to remember about these demarcations, when we come here as foreigners, we have so many great ideas about how to integrate China into the world economy. Chinese leaders, business and government, they know those things. Just like the Great Wall itself, the demarcations are always self-imposed, and they have a very good reason to be there, because a legal system is always an expression of what the world should look like. It's a philosophy. So, for example, if we look at credit cards, and one of my favorite examples, after lunch I'm going to deliver a lecture for Shanghai Jiaotong University. One of my favorite case studies is Union Pay, which is a card payment system developed in China. And for more than a decade, it was a darling of the Chinese government, and there was a big ambition to make it an international payment system, until they realized that Chinese people using UnionPay can circumvent the exchange regulations imposed on them. And then suddenly there was a reverse wave of trying not to make UnionPay an international payment system anymore. So if an international consultant comes and asks or gives advice to Chinese companies about how to integrate more and more, very often that's not news. It's just under the circumstances, it is not instrumental for the Chinese government to introduce those kind of new integrative measures.